Okay. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today at RC Podcast as we're talking about a very serious topic, which is the recent Titanic submarine disaster. And before we start off with that, though, I do want to start off with something not related because, as we've discussed before, but your partner is transgender. And I was just wondering if they've participated in any pride events this year, or if things are pretty dangerous there for them.
We haven't had any Pride events in the area we live in yet. We might go to Pride, but I've told you privately, like a week ago, I think, that the Proud Boys white supremacist group threatened to bomb a local Pride event where I live. So, yeah, the police department is doing a joint operation with police departments across the county in an effort to stop them. Some of the cops are going to be plainclothes, others are going to be in uniform.
You should specify that it's just 3 cities.
The city that it's in, and then 2 cities surrounding it. Because you said across the county, that makes it seem bigger than it is. I thought the rest of the county had joined in.
No, it's just the 3, but that's still a decent amount.
Yeah.
Ben, do you find it at all awkward to have, though? It used to be Pride was like a day, then it went to a week, and now it's like an entire month. Do you find it like totally necessary to have an entire month to have these kind of celebrations?
I do. I look at it this way. There are various groups that have entire months. Military veterans in the military have an entire month. I think Indigenous people have a month. I think Unionists have a month.
Black people
have a month. There's various groups that have whole months. I don't see why the LGBT community shouldn't be, one of those groups that has a month. And really, if the LGBT community received better treatment writ large, they probably wouldn't feel the need for a month. They probably wouldn't feel a need for celebrations at all, because they'd suddenly be respected, accepted, and not a marginalized group anymore. But that's not the world we live in.
But I gotta be frank and ask you this: like, do you not think that some of the displays in which they're participating is like actually damages their cause, like you were just talking about? Because I'm fine for having an incorporation and inclusion in society, but at the same time, I don't want to like drive down the street and see guys like in BDSM gear like whipping each other and stuff. Like, that's a bit too extreme in my book. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that happens very commonly. Sure, there are some events where that happens, but you got to bear in mind also that the BDSM community has kind of joined in with the LGBT community because of the lack of acceptance. I mean, the people who are into BDSM, I don't know if you are aware of this, Alex. I'm sure my spouse can send you articles if you like about how BDSM is treated as sexual abuse of a partner. So the BDSM community jumps in to get their own thing, but I mean, there's no like full sexual display going on, if you're getting what I mean.
Well, no. Are they actually having sex? No, but are they simulating the acts? Absolutely. I've seen it on display, and I just got to say, quite frankly, I find it a bit disturbing, and especially just if what you're talking about is wanting to be a part of society. You got to understand there's big parts of society, or like, we're not going to be okay with people going down parades and dressing like that. And if you want to have your displays and demonstration, that's another thing. I was in Turkey, for example. I arrived to Turkey, and I was a bit nervous about like getting kidnapped there by Islamic extremists and things like that. And but I went there, and I actually walked into like a gay rights demonstration where they had gay rights flags, and they were genuinely like marching for like gay rights, and they weren't doing anything that was remotely questionable. They all had their clothes on. They were just saying we deserve rights, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, just something to think about. But I do want to get into the main topic, which is the disaster that has recently happened. Any chance you've been following that at all?
I've been following a little bit here and there, mostly through memes that I see on Twitter and Facebook. But I do know some facts of the matter with the submarine.
I've only seen one meme specifically. It was of a of a sex toy, and it had a picture of the submarine, and it had the sex toy, and it says both are filled with dead semen, and it was being shared like something like to laugh about. It's just really disturbing. I found that so distasteful and so disturbing. But have you seen much like disrespectful things that are going around online? I'm just curious.
I mean, like if you're gonna consider those memes disrespectful or distasteful, yeah, I've seen plenty. The most recent meme I saw was I think it was Elon Musk saying "cis" is a slur, in the "Okay, Grandpa" that meme.
With the orcas?
Yeah, with the orcas, and it said, "Okay, Grandpa, let's get you to the bottom of the ocean," and it's got a couple of orcas celebrating. Because I'm sure you've heard of the orcas attacking yachts.
Oh, right. Okay, I didn't initially get that. So let's start to let's unpack this a little bit, because I don't, there's a lot of things going on about the science of what exactly took place, and I'll be the first to admit I don't really understand I mean, I do understand you have a lot of water on something on top of you, it's going to smash things down, and so I was just reading some of this online about how just even small, tiny bubbles in the ceiling and in the equipment can cause a potential implosion, that's whenever it crushes in. Some people were saying explosion, but it wouldn't have been an explosion. It would be something of an implosion. And I was also reading that would have happened in milliseconds. So if there is anything to be grateful about in this situation, is that, they could have maybe just had not really much of a pain in any of this. So that is, I guess, one thing to be grateful in all of this. I mean, if they would have actually suffocated, that might have been an absolutely terrifying thing to suffocate in any way, but in such a confined space. I think that would have added to the terror and just the darkness all around you. I just cannot imagine what it would have been like to go through something like that,
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you, what do you think has been the main reason why there's been such pushback against these people in particular? Because I think that's interesting to discuss.
Well, a lot of it, I think, has to do with their wealth. And you have to understand, at least here in America, the way you accumulate wealth is almost exclusively by metaphorically stepping on other people. Mm-hmm. You basically have to, if you're going to become wealthy, your financial success is built on the work of other people that you are not compensating properly. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Alex found an article that said one of them, his family's generational wealth comes from the slave trade.
That was proven to be false.
Oh, it was proven to be false?
Sorry I didn't tell you that. I was enjoying my high. That was proven to be false, but what you say still is true with the how you get wealth.
Yeah. You know? So X the slave trade thing that apparently has been debunked. But yeah, in America, writ large, if you're gonna become wealthy, it's on the backs of other people.
So, okay, so a couple of things to talk about there. One, from what I've read, the main guy who was built this thing, that he had his wealth was, I guess it was generational, because I guess he had some distant relatives who were signers of the Declaration of Independence. So there has been generational wealth passed down. And I think at that level, it's like, I don't want to make this too much about economics, but yeah, if you start to trace things back, several hundreds of years ago, there was literal money being made off the backs of people. And a lot of that has been passed down for generations and generations. And, and then there's just nepotism and societies and power that, basically circulate their wealth and help each other out. So there is a lot of that at play here. I think if these were just 5 dudes, do you think there would have been the same kind of pushback that we've seen here?
I don't think it would have made the news. Not even a little bit. Just days before the submarine implosion happened, there was a boat with 752 migrants that got lost. I don't know if it's been found yet, but that got precisely 0 news coverage, because it's a bunch of people who they're poor. So who cares? They're also not from here. So who cares? They're not white. Who cares?
Right.
I just saw an article that the migrant boat sunk and they found 78 bodies and 104 passengers were saved.
Okay.
But I had to actively look for it.
Yeah, I don't know how well that came through to the listeners, but the boat sank. There were how many bodies found?
78 dead bodies were
78 bodies.
And 104 passengers out of over 700 have been found. The rest are lost at sea.
So there's multiple things at play here, because I have a book that I'm getting ready to release, which is like on racism. And I've talked about like the various degrees in which society will value people. Race is definitely one of them, but it's not the only one. If you have status, if you have some music or artistic ability, if you're famous, if you have money, like there's a tier that you're on. It's not like, okay, a white person in down South Alabama, if that person dies, it's going to be the same coverage as like a Oprah or Barack Obama. We put people on tiers, and some of that is good looking, whether or not someone is attractive. There was a case back with Natalie Holloway, who went missing in Aruba, and you just have to ask yourself, like, do you think this person might have gotten the same attention had they been a 300-pound white woman with acne? It just happened to be the case. She was very attractive and very thin. And, that's just an unfortunate reality of the world, the society we live in. I mean, I would love to see a world where everyone is treated equal and we're given, the same level of care and attention to every life. But that's just unfortunately not the world we live in, And so a lot of this comes down to money. People who have money tend to get more attention. That's an unfortunate reality. But I do want to ask you something specifically about this, because I would think one of the reasons why most people would be upset and not giving any kind of empathy towards these people is because it was such a stupid and idiotic thing to do in the first place. It's like if you want to jump out of a plane with no parachute and then try to glide your way down or something, and you get into an accident. Like, most people would just say you shouldn't have been doing such an idiotic thing in the first place. It's hard to have sympathy for people who are doing things that are risky. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, the idea of jumping out of the plane without a parachute is pretty stupid, unless you're a Jedi, but those don't exist, at least in this galaxy. But I mean, yeah, I definitely think some of it is, it was a dumb thing to do. I mean, these people had to sign waivers before they could even step into the submarine. So, some of the things were serious injury or death, so they knew it was a possibility. From something I saw in the news, the submarine was rated to go down 1,800 meters. Now, I don't know how many people know the different depths of things, but 2,000 meters is about halfway to the depth of the Titanic.
Okay.
Which is sitting around 4,000 meters. So we're talking about a submersible that's not rated for the depth that they intended to go. So, I mean, this is a one-way trip sort of deal.
Right.
With it. I mean, it would have imploded. Like it would have taken a genuine miracle for it to not implode before it reached the depth of the Titanic.
Yeah, see, and this is just a crazy thing. Like, sometimes like rappers will come on and they'll say like, I got nothing to lose or something like that. They'll rap. And they're like, if you think about it, you're like, no, you got a lot to lose. You know what I mean? You got fame, you got houses, you got cars, you got money. Really, it's like the people who are on the corner street who have nothing at all. They have nothing to lose. They literally, there's nothing that they can lose. And so people like this who have really large amounts of money, they have a lot more to risk than people like me and you. So to me, it is so much more baffling why someone who has millions or billions of dollars would risk something like this. Where, I mean, I was genuinely baffled. They were using like a control, like a game, Xbox or something. It was ridiculous that they were navigating with the controller for a game. So it seems like, yeah, I do have to say there is that element where I have to take a step back and say, like, what were you thinking in the first place? Two, like, I think that says just something about riches, though. Like, have you ever seen Squid Game? Did you ever see that?
Believe it or not, no. I'm one of the very few people in the world that didn't get caught up with that show. I didn't watch it.
Yeah,
I know
one of my friends. You know the premise?
Mm-hmm.
So you know the premise that basically rich people are betting on people's lives because, like, they kind of just don't have anything else to do. Like, they're just, everything is kind of lost its appeal in their life. And actually betting on people's lives is the only thing that gives a kick anymore, And I'm not saying that's the situation that these guys were in, but that is one of the dangers of riches that a lot of people don't really think about. Everyone wants to be filthy rich, but it does have its drawbacks. So I'd like to talk about that real quick, about kind of that conundrum that rich people get into. Like, what am I going to buy next? You have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of agree with Mage Grey Wolf in the comment section. Some of it's thrill seeking. You know, I don't know. Like, living in poverty, it's not a thrill to not know where your next meal is going to come from. Right. But, you know, it's a bit of an adrenaline rush because you get worried, you get stressed. You know, so there's that aspect that, you know, I honestly think that poor people might be more risk averse in some ways. But sometimes I think that having too much money would be something that makes you lose touch with reality a little bit.
Right. People definitely.
Yeah, there are so many rich people that don't know the price of a gallon of milk. You know, whereas poor people, yeah, we know what a gallon of milk costs. At least within 50 cents, we know what it costs. You know,
I don't know. I know what a pint of milk costs because I live in South Korea, so we use or liter. Yeah, we use totally different system here.
Yeah,
which if you notice online, almost everything that they were referring to had to do with meters. You know, because metric, the system is so much more. I mean, when you live here, you'd realize how much more efficient it is. You know, it's a brilliant. It is an absolute brilliant system, absolute brilliant. But okay, so I do want to talk about another thing then, because this is genuinely shocking for me. I do want to say this, and this is not to toot my own horn, but the more money I've got like, I've been able to do more stuff with it, you know? I enjoy making more money because I'm able to help a lot more people, you know? And as you've known this, that RHE podcast, I've been able to do a lot of stuff helping people out, including recently some of the survivors of the Itaewon crowd crush that I do want to talk about a little bit later. But one of the things that does get so disturbing to me, because I don't think it's wrong to get rich and to make money and to do well for yourself. I don't find anything wrong with that, you know, because some of that can be done immorally, but you just have to be persistent and you have to not let the failures, like, you know, prevent you from doing what you need to do. So people who persist in that and they get successful, like, I don't find any problem with that. What I do find a problem with is like hoarding and not doing anything to benefit others and just to benefit yourself. And so when I see people who were responding to this, I could definitely see some of that is coming from, I want to say, maybe jealousy. Do you think that there's a level of jealousy behind it?
I don't think so.
No?
I mean,
forgetting the context of American economy.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Alex, like, very much so. The American economy is very different. It's designed to keep more poor people in their place, right. You know, and, you know, so I'm working from the context of the system is designed to keep me exactly where I'm at. You know, it wants me to keep working in less than desirable circumstances. It wants me to remain poor and be so tired at the end of the day that I just can't do anything to change my circumstance. You know, so that's part of why I don't think it's jealousy, because you look at these people and at the very least one of them has generational wealth. So yeah, I don't think it's really a jealousy thing. You know, some of it's, I would think it's more of an anger thing. You know, it's like, you know, yeah, maybe these people deserved it. They had to step on other people to get their wealth. Yeah, screw them. Which I understand.
Okay, so I do want to talk. Okay, so I did mention the Itaewon disaster that happened last year. You familiar with that? What happened?
The what?
Itaewon disaster in South Korea.
I hadn't heard of that. No.
Okay, so last Halloween, 160 people got crushed in South Korea, and it might be one of the most morbid stories I've ever heard of in my life, because of the fact that everybody was dressed up for Halloween. So you just had like witches and nurses, and we're getting, people who already look like ghosts and stuff. And I mean, you just see some crazy stuff like you would have never seen before. Like, I guess Super Mario brother was dressed up, and he was like a paramedic, and he's like over there doing CPR on like a princess or something. Like, you would never, I mean, this would be like one of the worst nightmares you could imagine. Like, it was just bodies just stacked up. And I almost went there. Like, I was really close to going there, but my friend canceled, so I didn't go there after all. But even had I gone there, there's no way I would have went into that crowd. And not even to do with risk, just I wouldn't have wanted to been shoulder to shoulder with so many people getting smashed around, If I would have been in there for a little bit, I would have gotten out. But there was a little bit of that, like, man, why were these people there in the first place, surrounded by all these people, And you can sit around and you could talk about risk aversion and all that, but at the end of the day, it's like these were lives that are lost. These are lives that are not breathing right now, that are not having conversations, who had family who cared about them. At the end of the day, that is a tragedy, regardless if they're, if they took a risk themselves, it's a loss of life that we can't get back. So, you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I understand the sentiment behind it, but the question I have to ask is, would these 5 people that died on the submarine feel the same amount of empathy?
No.
I genuinely don't think they would. Yeah, I don't think they would. And any of them that owned companies that screws over its workers, that would obviously show a lack of empathy.
In America, if you own a company, if you're a CEO or something, you do commit wage theft and worker abuse on a daily basis. That's just a fact in America. There's very rare exceptions to that,
Yeah, that I get your point. And I'm glad to have a differing. I'm glad to have a differing opinion and a different perspective. I'm definitely appreciative of RHG podcast for allowing that. Where we don't have to I don't have to attack you on a personal level. I tend to think. Let's just assume that what you say is accurate, everything that you said. People like that are missing something key inside of their, which is the empathy, And actually, in my book, I talk about why empathy is the number one tool in fighting racism. I have a whole chapter on that. It's called Our Platinum Plumb Line, and it's a matter of taking a plumb line and measuring ourselves and measuring that around the world, and say, I want the same exact treatment that I would want for myself, because when my rights are abused, it affects me personally and it makes me angry. And when there's an abuse in another place, obviously, if things don't affect me, it doesn't have the same kind of power as when things directly influence me, right? So people like that, as you were talking about, they genuinely are just missing that. And I think it makes life so much more, so much richer whenever we are able to connect to each other like that. Because being a little island and being isolated, is a very sad thing, and I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said about them dying kind of like in the middle of a cold, dark ocean by themselves. Like maybe that might be something of an analogy of how they've lived their lives, you know? So I think we can learn from this either way though, you know? Actually, I do want to talk to you about one thing, and that is the idea of like exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do want to ask you, like, what is it do you think that keeps pushing people to explore like further and further? What are your thoughts on that?
We're curious.
Curious?
By the very nature of humanity, we're curious. You know, I don't know if you ever watch a show called The West Wing, but there's this great analogy, like specifically in regards to space exploration, you know, and someone's questioning, well, why are we trying to go to Mars? And the character in the show says, because it's what's next. You know, we went over the hill and saw what was there. Then we went over the mountain. Then we crossed the ocean. Space is what's next. We're curious. We want to know things. We're curators of knowledge. We want to know new things. We're too curious not to explore.
Right, and I think that's so fascinating that I've heard so many scientists saying that we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the ocean depths, you know?
Yeah.
That's such a fascinating concept, and I will talk about this because in my second book, I was talking about whenever I was overseas, I felt like a modern day Magellan. Okay, because you might say, well, I wasn't exploring anything that wasn't like new, which is totally true. It's like I was some kind of like someone who's trying to circumnavigate the globe for the first time. But I felt like any place I went, I was exploring it for myself, you know? And so there was that element of just wanting to do something totally bizarre, totally random, that was off of the map, you know, because a lot of people like to do the touristy things on maps. I used to like to get outside of the map and just go explore something. I used to make it a point to get lost when I was traveling. So just to get lost and try to find my way back. But I find it interesting that, that this, at least as far as the Earth, this seems to be the last frontier of the Earth, right? Because we went to Antarctic, we went to Everest, and those have, specifically Everest, it's been kind of cliche at this point. Like a lot of people have done it, but I think I like only 10, I don't know, not 10 people, but I think they said 10 crafts could go to this depth, but a really small amount of people have actually went down that deep. James Cameron being one of them. So this is like, at least in this planet, this is like the final frontier, right?
Yeah.
And I think people just will continue to take, this doesn't have to do with exploration, but it just has to do with doing stuff that is potentially dangerous and risky. You know what I mean? Like for me, this is crazy when I tell you this, because would I tell you how little reservation I had to go to North Korea or into Palestine? It would just blow your mind. Because literally I went to Israel and somebody was like, that's Palestine over there. And without reservation, the next morning I just got up and I walked out to it, because I don't know. I was in a different stage of my life where I enjoy taking risks, you know? So I just walked to Palestine and just chilled out there for like a week. But there's, I don't know. Why do you think it is that people enjoy taking risks? Like whether it's with extreme sports or gambling. What are your thoughts on that?
I think some of it has to do with age. I did the more physically stupid and risky stuff when I was younger. You know, back when my body could handle it. Today it probably can't. If I sleep at the wrong angle, I'm in pain for days.
I got a bad knee. I got a bad knee right now.
But I mean, some of it has to do with age. You know, you were a younger man when you went to Palestine. You know, I did stupid stuff when I was younger. Pretty much everyone does really stupid, physically risky stuff when they're younger.
Right.
As I get older, I think the more risky things I do are more mental. You know, like or more abstract, not mental. They're more abstract. Like some financial risks seem more worthwhile than they would have when I was younger. When I was younger, I'd have been like, oh, I'm going to go to the bar. I'm going to go to the strip club. Right. You know, and that's where I'm going to waste my money back then. Yeah. Whereas now I'm thinking, okay, maybe when I have a little bit of extra cash, I dip my toe into the stock market. You know, that it's an entirely different kind of risk. Right. But, you know, I mean, I think with age, the risk you're willing to take changes. You know, to some degree, everybody is stupid or ignorant. You know, sometimes you just make stupid, bad decisions. You know, so it all risk is contextual. You know, like extreme sports athlete. The risk they're taking is considerably lower than the risk you or I would take by doing literally the same activity.
Right. That's understandable.
You know, like Tony Hawk is great on a skateboard, but I get the feeling both of us would go down the ramp and fall flat on our faces.
Right. If I even made it down the ramp, I would be surprised if I made it down the ramp, if I was even able to balance myself at all. But I do want to say this. Okay, so this would be interesting because if you ever look at the extreme sports, 99.9% of those guys are always white. So you'll never see a Mexican dude up flying around with like a parachute, like jumping out of a plane. You might 1 in a million see like a black guy do it. But it's like, it seems like exclusively, this is an exclusive field where it's just white people doing this. And do you think that has anything to do with kind of like what we were talking about earlier? Like if you start, because white people, we know just by the numbers are more likely to have some, you know, establishment. And so kind of you get to a point where you just start seeking new thrills. Do you think there's anything to say about that?
I think some of it would have to go back to privilege in society. Like I, as a white person in America, have considerably less to worry about than, you know, my non-white society members. You know, I don't have to worry about a cop just randomly pulling me over when I'm walking down the street. It's not a thing I have to think about ever. You know, so when it comes to mostly white people doing this extreme sports stupid shit, like oh God, this is going back to maybe like 2013, but the guy who jumped from low orbit.
Oh, right.
You remember what I'm talking about? Yeah. Like he went up on, I don't remember how the hell he got there, but he leapt from low orbit and, you know, just spent the next 17 minutes in free fall.
Falling.
Reaching terminal velocity that the human body can reach, and then pulling a chute and landing. Right. That's pretty stupid. It was cool. I mean, I'll grant that. 7 days
was white,
out of
right?
the week.
He was white.
Yep.
Any chance you heard about the guy from England who came here like 2 weeks ago and climbed up the Lotte Tower in South Korea?
I did not hear about that. Did he use suction cups or something like that to climb up? Or
I have no idea what he was doing, but he was from England, and he scaled up the largest tower in Korea, which is like 111 stories. And he made it up like 50 feet or 50 stories. And then they sent up a boom to get him. And then they put him in jail, and then they just made him go back to his country. But yeah, there was another crazy thing where, and I swear, it just seems like people create different ways to do stuff that is just more insane. They want to either go faster or take a bigger risk. But there's this famous story. He made a documentary out of it called Man on a Wire, where this guy walked between the Twin Towers in New York. And he had to train for like several years to be able to pull this off. And they literally had to take a bow and arrow and tie like a string on it and like shoot it across, and then jerry rigged the cables, and he walked across it. But it seems like people just are continually creating ways in which to be dangerous and take risks. But I do want to get back to the Titanic, because you mentioned the other disaster that took place with the migrants, and I didn't hear anything about that myself, but I do want to talk just why do you think in general people gravitate towards negative stories? Like, I'm sure you've heard the expression, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, I've heard that expression. Yeah.
What do you think it is about that's driving that in humanity?
Some of it I think might be a sense of Schadenfreude. Have you ever heard that German compound word?
Say it again.
Schadenfreude.
No.
The most literal translation for it is happiness at the misfortune of others.
Really? Huh.
The Germans are weird, man. And I'm weird because I'm descended from them. But
okay.
Yeah, I mean, some of it, I don't know. We just have this morbid fascination with the macabre. I mean, look at true crime. Perfect example is true crime. People will sit there and listen to hours of true crime stories. This murder happened. Here are the facts behind it. It's a very popular thing for people to listen to.
Are you calling me out directly? Because I've been watching true crime for like a few hours.
I'm calling you out indirectly. My spouse, everybody. Fear not for my life. But yeah, I don't personally understand it. Our fascination with the morbid, but I mean, I do find myself on occasion clicking on darker news stories.
Yeah, I think we all do. We all do.
Yeah, I think it's a way of vicariously living dangerously through others. And imagining, well, how could I succeed at it? How could I do this dangerous, potentially dumb thing and come out the other side?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is definitely not a point fingers, because there's like 3 or 4 different true crime YouTube channels that I watch, which is like, one of them is Beyond Evil. which they do some fascinating true life crime stuff, and Coffee House Crimes. Any chance you've ever seen that one?
I don't know any true crime. It's not my niche.
Well, I will tell you this too, though. It does seem like there's this better them than me, as you're kind of talking about, because one of my favorite shows of all time is Judge Judy, and when I watch it, I'm like, some days I feel like really bad about my shortcomings as a human being. I'm like, there's a lot of lack inside of Isaiah Perez. I'm like, man, I got some dysfunctions that I should have been able to solve by the age of 40. And then I watched Judge Judy, and I'm like, dang, I ain't so bad at all, man. See the kind of stuff that people are going down there, that's going down. And it actually, I mean, that's a sad reality when I think that I would need to look to other people to feel better about myself. But hey, if I'm just being honest as a human being, that's an element of it. Any chance you watch Black Mirror?
Yeah, I've only seen season 1, so don't spoil anything beyond that for me. But if you're going where I think you're going, I think it's actually the first episode where I think it's the British Prime Minister's daughter gets kidnapped, and the Prime Minister. No, don't say that. That's instant demonetization if you go there. That's not where I'm.
No, actually, season 6 just dropped after about a 3-year hiatus, and I won't give any spoilers, but
thank you.
it deals with the true crime fascination and how it winds up affecting somebody. You really got to watch season 6; it's amazing. But then there's this other one where there's no spoilers here because this is like just the plot of the story, but this woman winds up seeing her life being lived out by like Salma Hayek on a TV show. And it's doing it her whole life. Like, they made a whole TV show, and the title is actually called Joan is Awful. And she's Joan. And at the end of the day, they're having Salma play her life and kind of like embellishing some of the stuff that she's doing. It's like she's a bad person, but they're really embellishing it. And so basically she goes on this quest to like try to find out what's going on. And essentially they wind up telling her that like, well, this is like free content. We can make this free content by making your life. We have an AI that'll do it. And basically they say, we tried to make a shows that were like, this Brian is awesome, where they're just talking about the positive things, but they're like, nobody was interested in that. Everybody wanted to see the awful side of everyone else. That's what audience connected with. Because I don't know, part of it may be empathy, but part of it may just be, not feeling as bad for ourselves, because you mentioned that earlier, everyone is stupid and ignorant. And I think that's part of the issue, is that, I mean, maybe this relates back to this disaster, but we can kind of look at them and say, wow, man, well, at least I wasn't doing something that stupid. You know what I mean? But if you want to go through and break down all the questionable decisions I've made and my behavior, I wouldn't want that to be on display to the world, You think there's any connection between that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, on YouTube, I kind of made a horse's ass of myself a little bit. Who doesn't? When they're running a YouTube channel. But I mean, as for some of the dumber stuff I've done in my life, I would hate to see that broadcasted.
I know.
You know what I mean? It's like, man, I made such an ass of myself when that one thing happened. I really hope nobody sees it.
Right.
Yeah, but there's always gonna be that one person that's like, I want to see it.
I want to know.
Yeah. And I just can't help but think that there's like a tied in relationship between these people, because it's easy to look at them and say, "Oh, you idiot, you took this risk, you should have done this, you should have done that." It's so easy to do that when we're talking about other people's lives, But for the love of God, if you were to take my life decisions, even on a daily basis, like today, yesterday, and probably what I'll do tomorrow, and wanting that could you imagine a documentary, literally, Bub, being made about your life where people are being interviewed about you, giving their honest thoughts about you? It's pretty bad if you think about it, honestly. And I think this is one of the really bad things about social media, because this has just become far more doable, like if you were to backtrack 200 years ago, everyone would have been living, just self-sustaining lives, and you really couldn't get in other people's business. You know what I mean? You could gossip a bit, but you couldn't go online, and you couldn't tweet about people, and you couldn't watch documentaries about people. You know what I mean? I think.
Yeah. I don't understand the whole fascination watching documentaries about people. Like, there's a movie being made. It's already been made. It's going to be released sometime in the next year, I think, called Flamin' Hot, about the guy who invented the Flaming Hot Dorito. It's
already been released.
Oh, it has?
It's on Hulu, yeah.
I mean, I don't understand the audience they're going for with that particular movie.
Latinos, they're going for Latinos, ese vato loco. Come on, you not think I'm gonna watch it?
I'm sure you'll watch it. I don't know your taste in movies, but I mean there's so much. Okay, I can't say there's so much good representation for Latinos, because that's not accurate. But I
talk a lot about that, about how badly we were represented in movies growing up. I talk about that, how that affected my psyche growing up. But I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Like actually the only good representation that I can think of that Latinos have gotten recently or possibly ever is Encanto.
I don't even know that.
It's a Disney film. Is it Disney or Pixar, hon?
What are we talking about?
Encanto? Disney or Pixar? Disney
owns Pixar, so does the distinction matter?
Not really, no.
But there's also the Latinx, the Afro-Latinx, I forget her name, but the show's called Wish, and she's Latina, she's Afro-Latinx, so there's that too that people seem to be very happy about.
Okay.
But to answer your question really quickly, though, this gets back to what I said about people who are rich, why I don't actually have an issue with people who are rich. But that guy was like a janitor. He was a janitor who had a dream and went from that to getting, in my opinion, the best Cheetos on the planet. And so there's something to be said about that, having a dream and continually with it. I think that encompasses the human drive. Talk about exploration, to do something that you're not doing right now. I think that's a beautiful thing. But I do get what you're talking about in general, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, why is this movie being made? Like, speaking of Hulu, they did a remake of White Men Can't Jump. And I'm like, why does this movie exist? There's they add nothing to the story. They stripped everything out of the story. I'm like, it doesn't really make sense. But your point is taken, though. I do get your point. Just a bad example.
Probably, actually, yeah. I mean, because, part of it is I didn't really think the context. It was a janitor who was definitely not being paid enough. And I think the way the movie portrays it, his kid's the one that keeps adding hot sauce and spices to the Cheetos or whatever the kid eats. Because I mean, that just in the preview, the kid said it burns good like 2 or 3 times. So clearly, the kid likes hot food.
Yeah.
So the impression the movie I think gives is that his kid came up with it. I don't know the actual history of the Flamin' Hot Cheeto.
I see. Well, anyway, you got any last thoughts on this this Titanic story before we go?
So I mentioned that I don't really feel a lot of empathy or sympathy for the people who went on this underwater voyage. There is one person that I do feel sorry for that went. He was a 19-year-old kid, and he didn't want to go, but his family and friends kept pressuring him into going. So he signed the waiver, and this 19-year-old who could have gone on to do some good things with his family's wealth, could definitely have, possibly changed the face of the country. Who the hell knows? Who knows what this kid could have done? He was 19 years old. It literally his whole life in front of him. He didn't want to be there. Him, I do feel sympathy for because he was pushed into going. But I still don't really feel a lot of sympathy for the other people that were there, the people that wanted to be there, because they had to have been told that the sub they were going on wasn't rated for the depth that they intended to go to. I mean, you're trying to go 4,000 meters down in a boat that's not even rated for 2,000. So you almost have to have a death wish at that point.
Right.
So I lack sympathy for these people, except for the one. But I mean, I would say it's entirely inappropriate to make jokes. But, I mean, one, there should probably be some sympathy for the family members. Maybe some people in the family didn't want them to go on this thing. I don't know. I'm sure that wives of these people certainly didn't want them to do it. And again, in my experience,
never know.
Women are a lot more sympathetic than men.
Yeah, you never know what we don't know what kind of person they were in their personal life. They could have been abusive people or whatever. Like, we don't really know what the spouse was thinking. Maybe they're probably rejoicing. Who knows?
I mean, right? Apparently Alex found an article that said all but one of the children of these, the 4 people who actually had kids, there was only one child
that's come out so far
saying that they wish their parent didn't do this. The others don't care.
Well, I do want to close off then. I just do want to say this because from somebody who genuinely had a death wish in their lives, who genuinely didn't care whether or not they lived, I can tell you, bro, that's a really dark place to be, man. One of those times came after my mom passed away, and I was just engaging in extremely risky behavior, including drugs and stuff. And that's a dark place, If this was a death wish, if these people did want to go down in a flaming, watery glory, I don't see as a human being why you wouldn't, connect with that, because there's people who commit suicide every single day who have death wishes. And the fact that they have money that you might think might insulate them from sorrow, pain, disaster, or depression, like money's not an insulation against that,
No, I'm not saying money is an insulation against that. The difference is that they have access to mental health care that people in poverty don't because of that money.
Right.
So if they have this death wish, see a psychologist, see a psychiatrist, and get prescribed medication for depression. It not to run roughshod over you right here, but if you have the means to get mental health help, if you need it, do it. I'm sure that we can find some free resources for people who can't afford it. I'll do what I can to find free resources and post them in the comments. If you're suffering with depression or anxiety or anything like that, I'll definitely post something in the comments if I'm able to find anything. But if you've got the means, absolutely seek help. I would say even if you don't have the means, it's worth getting help because, most people. I'm in my mid-30s and I still have this childlike belief that most people are good. There's a fairly strong chance that the world is better with you in it. So if you can get help, do.
Yeah, and I just do want to close off by I had mentioned earlier that if you are rich, if you are a billionaire, you have significantly more to lose than other people. There's a bigger risk. So if you were engaging in something like this, just something is wrong at a deep level. And I know you're saying you should have gotten help, but lots of people should get help. For people in my family, I've lost members of my family due to substance abuse and alcoholism and stuff like that. So I've lost multiple family members to that. And so for me, I just always want to be really careful when I'm talking about, about trying to put people on various levels of who I think I should feel sympathy for or who I think is in need of or deserving of sympathy or help from anyone. For me, I don't want to, as a Christian, I don't want to be like an arbiter as someone who's saying this person is better, I'm better than that person or this person. Just if you need help, as you said, seek it. If you need help, seek it. If you're depressed, reach out. I think you probably put it more beautifully than I think I've ever heard put. The world is probably better with you in it. And there's probably a few exceptions to that, of course. But we have this one life to live. So I think while we're here, we should definitely be trying to help out each other, as much as we can. As you know, I'm a Christian, but if someone's gay, trans, Hindu, whatever, they need my help, I'm going to reach out my hand no matter what. And I think we really need to be doing that, whether they're same economic status as us or same race or religion or country, whatever. I really think we need to put on our blinders as far as this goes, because although they died isolated, kind of away from people, this is happening every day to people, people are dying isolated and alone. And the fact that we aren't reaching out to everyone I think ultimately is an indictment on everybody, because we can sit around and point fingers that, oh, this person didn't do this with their resources, but we very frequently don't do things that we can do with the resources we do have. And so I just do want to say that. And thank you so much. Always appreciate your feedback. Definitely appreciate your feedback. And thank you so much for joining us today as we talked about this topic. Please leave us a comment on what you thought. I thought this was a fascinating, there's so many things to discuss. I mean, the fact that Titanic is still being talked about 100 years later, I mean, clearly people are still interested in this. But definitely would like to get people's opinion. Thank you for the people who joined in the chat. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share. We'd really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you back at RSC Podcast. And here's our outro.